Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are we all doing tonight on this glorious, beautiful evening? It's a Monday evening after all that fresh, brand new snowfall we just got. Bear with me, I'm trying to do a sound check here. This is going to be kind of an interesting evening for live streaming to all general election, and then the normal primary it just was open to everybody, and then we moved on to the general election, which was ranked choice voting, and we saw how well that worked out for the state of Alaska. We ended up electing one of the most left-leaning legislative bodies that we have seen down there in Juneau in an extremely long time, and their entire agenda has been on full display this year. It's all about how to spend our money any way that they possibly can, something that they real life church, and it is becoming an ongoing problem. This is the third time I've been here to try to do a live stream and cannot get a good solid connection. I'm going by what I am seeing here online right now, and it appears that nobody is able to keep a solid stream with me. I'm stalling out on everybody out there. So again, this is we're at the Alaska School of Government. It's a real life church here in Palmer, Alaska. It's usually held the second Monday of the month. But it looks like just from the stream I'm getting it is. I will have to go back in and reset my settings here to get it to stream to just one channel, so you guys don't have to sit there and watch this stop and go broadcast. Again, thank you guys all for being here this evening. And due to microphone issues also, we'll do our best to make sure the sound quality stays as best as we possibly can on this. And again, don't forget, like and share this video. You can find it live right now on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook at Politadick Unfiltered. You can also find this on rumble.com and enjoy it there. And while you're at our website, please go to the support page. All your support helps us be able to do streams like this one. Our next step, I think, is probably to see if we can get a part of that Starlink and be able to have our own portable internet anywhere we go. So that way when we walk into buildings like this one on a day like today, we'll still have quality enough internet to be able to live stream this to you uncut and unfiltered. Hopefully all of you guys today at 6 o'clock got to be able to call into Juneau and testify on House Bill 45. The one where you can donate your entire PFD in increments of $25 all the way up to the full amount directly over to government, because they know how to spend it better than you do. I was definitely one of the first ones to get able to call in and testify, and you guys can help by writing them an email, letting them know what you think about this bill. But I outright told them this is a great opportunity to put their money where their mouth is. Repeal SB 21, the POMV law. Let's see if Alaskans really want to give up their PFDs to pay for government. All right, looks like Edna is about ready to begin. I'm going to shut my trap right here, right now, and let her get the floor of the show.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Buddy, you need in here?
Oh, just gonna slip right here. This is going to be an interesting broadcast. Due to not being able to hook up the big boom mic today, I now got one sitting by the speaker and one sitting here on my mic.
If I can go ahead and have everybody take their seat, please, so we can get started. So I'm going to open, if you all stand, please. My husband will open us in prayer, and then Lori's going to lead us in the pledge.
For this cause I bow my knee before the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, in whom the whole family on heaven and earth is named, that would grant unto us, according to your riches and glory, to be strengthened with might, but Spirit, the inner man, that Christ may dwell in our hearts by faith, that we be rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what's the breadth, the length, the depth, and the height, and know the love of Christ that passes all understanding. Amen.
If y'all join with me in pledge to the Republic, if you remember it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mary, if you want to come up, I'll let you go ahead and do, we're going to have go ahead and be seated. We're going to have a quick announcement, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. The only reason I'm letting her go forth is because she delivered my 2 youngest grandchildren, and they, you guys all know I'm so transparent with all of you, but anyway, that's the joke, and they're healthy and whole.
Thank you, Edna. I am so appreciative of being able to come and chat with you guys really briefly. I totally called in a favor and said, hey, I really want to talk to School of Government before I go to Juneau. So what's happening is your Alaskan midwives are rallying public support because we need to update our statutes. In Alaska, we have legalized midwifery care for 30 years. It has been 30 years since we have updated those statutes, and it's time. Because we have to update the statutes through the legislature, we have to get the politicians in Juneau to push it through. So we are going to Juneau on Tuesday, and we're trying to get as big of a stack as we can of signatures. If you would please just write your name and like the city that you're from so that we can decipher out and present to each legislator that we have big public support from their district. That would be super helpful. So midwifery care in Alaska is really important. Midwives are obviously pro-life, and we definitely feel like the people are behind us, but oftentimes the legislators don't really give 2 rips unless they see that the people are behind us. So here we are. Thank you.
She'll give you one, yeah. So I don't think I need to introduce our speaker, or is it going to be speakers or Oh, one, okay. So anyway, without further ado, Kelly, we're going to turn it over to you. So if whatever you want to say, and time for some questions, if you can be done like about 8:30, so that's an hour and 15 minutes. And if we go over a little bit, we try to have the program wrapped up by 9 and be out of here by 9:30. So, okay.
Well, we should definitely be able to make that. I did not think I could talk for an hour and a half about ranked choice voting, but it turns out that I can. So we will go as long as you want to go, but we also can wrap this up a little bit early because I know that we've had some weather this week. So friends, it's really great to be with you. I see a lot of friendly faces in the audience. Those who supported the campaign financially and knocked doors and held up signs for 2 years, Jack, I just want to say thank you so much. It was a wonderful couple years. It was about 600 days, if anybody was counting. We were. And we are going to continue the fight. And part of the way that we're continuing the fight is with this organization that we've started called Preserve Democracy. And if you are somebody who lives in the 21st century, you can find us at preservedemocracy.com. or on social media at Preserve Democra, because they cut you off. So ACY can't fit in, but that's where we are on social media. But most of the content is going to be on the website, where we're updating all the time with news and resources and things that you can use in your arsenal to say, why do we oppose ranked choice voting? It's not just because we didn't get the results we wanted. That would be a foolish reason, correct? So I want to explain to you what we're doing with this organization, which includes Republicans and moderates and Democrats. Yes, it is nonpartisan, truly, because we're all actually united in one common journey. Isn't it nice to have something that politics can unite around? Which is election integrity and making sure that our voices and our votes are heard. And so that's one of the reasons we started this. One of the things I want to say up front is, before you tune out to an hour and a half of talking, What are we getting at? What's the bottom line up front? There are several ways to fight ranked choice voting. We've got to educate and persuade Alaskans and Americans why this is bad. If you don't, there's not going to be any change because they don't understand the problem. Number two, we can try and get the legislature to overturn it. We are working on that, but some of them only got their seats because of this, so the likelihood that that'll happen this session is maybe a little bit less than likely. Number three, we can do a ballot initiative where we can sign and get signatures for a petition where it goes on the ballot, and in 2024 November, we have an opportunity to say ranked choice out or in, and we get to actually use our voices and votes again. Number four, a court can overturn it. And right now there is a case pending in the Ninth Circuit that could throw out our ranked choice voting system. Bottom line up front. Yes, I know. We're learning things already. Number one, education and persuasion. Number two, the legislature. Number three, the ballot initiative. Please sign it. And number four, the courts. Here's the thing. If we're stuck with ranked choice forever and ever, we have to educate and persuade people about ranked choice. We've got to drive voter turnout so that we overcome the limitations of the system, okay? Number two, if the legislature is going to take it up, they have to understand what they're voting for and voting against. So if we don't educate and persuade, the legislators are voting a little bit blind or maybe a little bit political. Number three, if there goes something on the ballot, then we need to counter the other side. Has anybody seen 80% of Alaskans love ranked choice? It's false. There is a legitimate poll from a legitimate liberal pollster who legitimately loves ranked choice, who found that 53% of us want to get rid of ranked choice voting. 53 plus 80 does not equal 100. Now, I am not a mathematician, but I did go to elementary school. And it cannot be both, correct? So the person with an agenda is putting out the propaganda telling us everybody loves it. And the person who doesn't have an agenda but has a strong opinion is saying Alaskans actually have a different opinion than he does. We have to get that story out there. And has anybody seen the insulting commercials that we're just like children and this is just like ice cream? We need the counter narrative, which is why Preserve Democracy is focusing on education and persuasion, and then voter turnout. Those are the things we're focused on, because no matter which of these happens, the underlying thing for all of them is we have to educate and persuade people and drive voter turnout. So shall we begin the slideshow? We love PowerPoint, don't we? Okay, next slide. Wait for it. It's really exciting. I'm pretty sure what it says, there is an emerging threat to our election in because ranked choice causes voter suppression. There you are. Ranked choice voting is an emerging threat. It causes voter suppression. Did I jump 2 slides? Okay, next slide. This is what happened. In November 2022, if you haven't been keeping up with what's going on in politics and elections, we had the lowest voter turnout in state history. I had heard this. I have a data analytics background for those who didn't keep up with the whole campaign. I decided I'd go back and look myself, all the way back to statehood. Never have we ever had such a low percentage turnout as we did in 2022. 44% of the state turned out to vote. 44%. What's even more interesting is you expect to have voter drop-off in an election. Usually people vote for the higher offices, you know, president, Senate, Congress, state judges, you know what I mean. You may have done this yourself. The opposite happened. People skipped US Senate and US House, picked up governor and picked up state house and state senate, which means only 40% of Alaskans voted for their US senator or their US House member. 40% was our federal race turnout. Never have we ever had such low voter turnout. So then the really interesting question from someone who's in data is, what did the rest of the US do? Was it just that kind of a year? No. The rest of the US had one of the highest voter turnouts it's had, especially for a non-presidential election year. Well, everybody in the room, what was different in Alaska in 2022? It is not hard to conclude that ranked choice voting suppressed the vote. Ranked choice voting suppressed the vote. Why? We'd have to go out and do a statewide poll to figure it out. And that's one of the things I'm asking for your help to do. You've got envelopes. You see that I not so subtly have already handed those out. We need to pay for a statewide poll that goes and asks rural and rail belt, the rich and the poor, the Democrats and the Republicans, because it was everybody. We've looked at all the different regions. Everybody didn't come at the exact same percentage. How did everybody get the memo to not come in the exact same percentage? Why didn't you come? Is it because of the standard reasons that affect voter suppression? Was it because of weather? By the way, the weather was great that day. Was it because you didn't get the absentee ballot you requested, or was it because the system was confusing? You didn't understand it, you didn't trust it, you get the idea. And when we have that poll, do you know how valuable that will be to prove through data that ranked choice voting caused voter suppression in Alaska? And I'll tell you the why in a little bit. Next slide. We have bipartisan opposition to ranked choice voting. Up at the top left, the New York Post has reported that the head of the NAACP, it's a liberal organization, in New York has slammed ranked choice voting. She says, ranked choice voting is not beneficial to minorities. It's voter suppression. It's not just Alaska. I hope that the courts see that ranked choice voting is not right for democracy. She also says in this same article, part of the reason she's so concerned about ranked choice voting is it has led to wrong results in the New York races. Erroneous calculations in ranked choice tabulations. Over on the right, San Francisco Chronicle. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. If you don't know, he is a Democrat. Okay? He vetoes a bill a couple years ago that would have made ranked choice voting possible statewide. And he says, nope. I'm concerned that ranked choice voting has often led to voter confusion. The cure being proposed for low turnout is far worse than the disease. We do not believe the board should be experimenting with San Francisco's hard-fought right to vote. Primaries and runoff elections have served our nation well for most of its history. And he killed the ranked choice voting bill for statewide in California. Interesting. Down at the bottom left, we see where our former U.S. Senator Mark Begich, Democrat, with our former Governor Sean Purnell, Republican, wrote an article together where they said, ranked choice voting is a confusing new system that encourages political trickery. Alaskans shouldn't have to doubt that their votes count. Interesting. And finally, down on the bottom right, Florida reported that it bans ranked choice voting in a new election law. Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, signed a bill in 2022 banning the implementation of ranked choice voting anywhere in Florida. There were some independent cities considering implementing it, and he said, absolutely not allowed in the free state of Florida. So right there, you see everybody from Governor Newsom to Governor DeSantis saying no to ranked choice voting. I want to reiterate, this is not a partisan issue. Because sometimes I think when I get feedback from friends who come to events like this, they don't know how to talk to their friends, or they don't know how to respond to all that stuff on social media that Kelly Tshibaka just stirred up. This is not a partisan issue. There are political leaders across this nation who see what's actually happening. And you cannot raise your hand and with a straight face say, I support voter suppression, can you? And that's what these political leaders are seeing. So next slide, please. ACLU has testified, the American Civil Liberties Union, if you're not familiar, it tends to lean to the left. Ranked choice ballots have suppressed voter turnout. Ranked choice voting has resulted in decreased turnouts up to 8% in non-presidential elections. So those are the ones that people don't usually care about, okay? Ranked choice voting exacerbates economic and racial disparities in voting. Voting errors and spoiled ballots occur far more often. Does anybody in this room have an experience with voting errors or spoiled ballots in 2022? We saw a lot of that. In Minneapolis, for example, nearly 10% of the ranked choice ballots were not counted. And this is the part that hurts. Most of these were in low-income communities of color. That's what they're finding. That was official testimony from the ACLU. Next slide. Ranked choice voting also creates these three things. You may have seen some mailers that came through your house that talk about all the great things about ranked choice. Myths. Here are your myth busters. It creates distrust. The San Francisco Chronicle recently reported, after the November 2022 election, when they certified the results, Alameda County admitted that they had a tallying error wrong in ranked choice voting. The algorithm messed it up. Weeks later, they figured out the algorithm got it wrong, but they'd already certified the election, so there's only one way to undo it. A judge has to undo it. Well, after it all came out that the algorithm got it wrong, guess what happened in Alameda County? Which, by the way, is, what newspaper is reporting this? Oh, so how do they lean politically? Same as this room or a little different? Okay. It raises big questions. So when you go through and you read these articles about Alameda County, the political leaders there who are already elected are calling to throw out ranked choice voting because you can't trust it. If you just flip a switch wrong or the algorithm gets it wrong and we find out too late that the wrong person got elected, how can we trust any of the results? At any time, they're saying. I don't know if you know this, but our former Division of Elections director testified in Juneau that our ranked choice voting system cannot be audited and you cannot do a recount on the results. Both of those things are required by state statute. But you cannot do either because the algorithm is too complicated. It's too complicated. You're seeing those things kind of play out in these headlines. Number two, ranked choice voting causes confusion. In fact, the Center for Public Integrity wrote an article about our system saying it's a perfect storm of confusion. Voting faces systemic challenges in Alaska. And then another thing that we don't want in elections, ranked choice voting causes increased negativity and increased costs. And the ranked choice voting election in Maine, which is the other state that has it statewide, in the year 2020, it was proven through empirical data that they had the most expensive and the most negative election ever in history. And you see the headline there in the Bangor Daily News. So if you ever need data to come back at people who are like, but it's so great, more options, you can trust it because of the computer algorithm. Everybody has to work together and get along. More negativity, more costs, distrust, confusion, and by the way, it seems like there's errors everywhere from literally California to New York. And what are we supposed to do about that? Next slide. It gets even better. In this journal, which is the Journal for Electoral Studies, which is published November 18th, 2014, for anybody who wants to geek out on this stuff like we are, ranked choice voting leads to ballots being tossed and winners getting less than 50% of the vote. Now, you might have heard, like I've heard, well, ranked choice voting is really important because then the winner represents 50% of the vote. Whoever wins gets 50% of the vote, right? The lower candidates drop off, and then the ranked candidates under them, their votes get redistributed until the winner has 50% of the vote or more. So that way we're guaranteeing that whoever wins actually represents 50% or more of the population, correct? You've heard this? I've heard this. You'll see this on your mailers and in your ice cream commercials. False. That's not how it works. In this study, they looked at 4 jurisdictions using ranked choice voting. And they said, first, in those 4 jurisdictions, none of the final winners received more than 46% of the vote. They were between 44 and 45. So total number of people walked in to vote, total number of people walked out of voting, less than 46% of those people ultimately voted for the winner. Does 46 equal 50? Nope. Okay, again. We don't have to be experts here, but you're playing a little bit of a shell game when you say that 50% of the final votes remaining are for the winner versus 50% of the people who came to vote voted for the winner. None of the people who won actually got a majority of the votes. In fact, if you look at the way ranked choice voting works, one of the other studies found that in just an original plurality election, you know, primaries happen, people go through, doesn't the winner sometimes get around 46 to 47% of the vote? Aren't we getting the exact same result, but kind of shuffling with how we got there so that different people win? That's another way people are analyzing it. They're saying you're actually coming out with the exact same percentage outcome, but with totally different candidates because of how you're shuffling the votes. This is what's actually happening. Over 27% of the ballots originally cast were thrown out as the ranked choice voting process progressed. That's what this study found. 27%. That talks like disenfranchisement of voting. They said some of this was because people did not want to vote. Some of this was because people didn't understand voting. Some of this is because people marked their ballots wrong and their ballots got thrown out. But regardless of how you define it, the reason that the candidates who won ended up with less than 46% of the vote is because there was so much what they call ballot exhaustion. That's when votes get taken out of the voting pool. This is what they found. This is their conclusion at the end. Ranked choice voting increases the difficulty of the task facing voters. A substantial number of voters either cannot or choose not to rank multiple candidates. By the way, that first sentence literally is the definition of voter suppression. Okay? Even individuals who mark 3 distinct choices often face the prospect of exhaustion, so education alone does not fix this problem. Doesn't matter how much we put towards education, doesn't matter how many millions we've invested, it's not going to solve this problem. Final conclusion. The possibility that exhaustion might tip the balance in the final round, i.e. produce a different candidate, poses a serious risk to the democratic legitimacy of the method and the outcomes it produces. Whoa. Now, this article was written like almost a decade ago, right? And the shot across the bow at the end of the article was, you need to know what you're getting into before you ever think about implementing this. How many people in our decision makers or our voters actually gone and read an academic journal that I imagine is nonpartisan or probably leans the way that academic journals lean, and read that last line? And read the last line. This is a serious risk to the democratic process, ranked choice voting. But hey, let's push it through, right? What else could happen? We have a serious threat on our hands, but here's more. Next slide. 75 is a great number for you to bring up when you're drinking coffee with a friend. In 2022, Alaska had 75 candidates run for our 3 statewide positions, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, and Governor. 75! Because we had no screening or vetting process by parties for our primaries, that means that each of us had the duty of researching and understanding each candidate's background, skills, qualifications, and campaign platforms so we could make an informed vote in November. Who did that for all 75 candidates? No. Maybe you did. You might legitimately be the only one. I did not. I was pretty invested in the race. I did not. I think it's virtually impossible to do this. And that was just those top 3. You then had your state house race and your state senate race, and whatever you wanted to do about all those judges on the back. It's virtually impossible. So then what does this mean? In just simple campaign strategy, you bombard the electorate with ads. Because whoever's ad you see the most is the person you're going to be influenced by the most. And who has the most money for ads? The incumbents. Incumbents have the most money for ads. And not just the most money, but what kind of money?
Dark money.
Dark money. You know, people have different opinions about dark money. I'm just saying a fact. Okay? They have the most dark money, which means that the people with the most dark money and the most money to put towards ads have a great advantage in this kind of system, right? Because there's so much chaos thrown at the voters. I mean, imagine we're one of the smallest electorates. If every state had ranked choice voting in these open primaries, our 75 candidates would be small compared to the other states, right? We only had about 240,000 people show up to vote. That's a mayor's race in other states. That was just 3 in a non-presidential year. The most money and the most dark money has the greatest influence. And now pop quiz. Which candidates won? Incumbents or non-incumbents?
Incumbent.
Incumbents. U.S. House, your incumbent won. The person who won the special election won the general election. U.S. Senate, your incumbent won. Governor, your incumbent won. I see these articles in Lower 48 that say ranked choice voting is so great, it worked wonderful in Alaska, we should try it here, and lots of states are using us as their example. They say it's great because people from all parties won. That's not what happened. The incumbents won. The incumbents won. Are we a system of the people, by the people, for the people? Should be. Or are we an incumbent protection system? Because this is an incumbent protection election system, which would make sense why it's the legislators across the United States who are the ones introducing these bills, you'll notice. It is an incumbent protection system because how can a grassroots or a third-party candidate have a fighting chance in a system built like this? We're seeing the results. Next slide. 1 is also a fantastic number to remember. In 2020, Alaska had 6 candidates running for federal office who were your third-party candidates. Independents, Alaska Independent Party, Constitution Party, Libertarian, Green Party, you name it. We love our flavors of candidates, don't we, Alaska? We had 6 just for our federal races. That does not include Al Gross, who technically was on the ballot as a Democrat, even though he said he's independent. So if we counted him, we would have had 7. This year, how many of those third-party candidates made it through our ranked choice voting related open primary all the way to the general election? Chris By was able to sneak in right at the end because somebody else dropped off. 1. So you might get these propaganda pieces that come through and say ranked choice gives you so many more options. Does it? It creates so many more opportunities for other candidates. Really? Where were our libertarian candidates? AIP? Independents? Green Party? Constitution Party? Where were any of them on the final ballot? Could that have affected why people didn't come vote? I was explaining this to another Republican leader who's a friend in politics, and he's like, oh, I don't really understand. And I said, well, imagine if there was no Republicans on the ballot. Would you vote? He said, no, why would I? There's no point. I said, that's how all of them feel. If your person isn't on the ballot, why would you take time out of your day to fill out a ballot? Which means we didn't get any of their second, third, or fourth place votes. Right? Is that really representing people? Or their voices? Or their votes? We didn't even get to see how much of a percentage is Alaska in the AIP. How much percentage is Alaska in Libertarian right now? How much is Alaska in Green Party right now? We don't even know. So you see, if we think of it as an Alaska home, ranked choice voting has a really big mudroom that's pretty muddy, full of 75 candidates. But when it comes time to actually get let into the House, the door is really, really narrow. And there's only a few people they let through, and they tend to be dominated by the establishment. Right? Republican, Republican, Democrat. Republican, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. Right? Let's have our eyes wide open about what's actually happening here and who's pulling the strings and the special interest groups that are funding it and what they're accomplishing. Next slide. More numbers. I had to update these today because it is growing. The number on the left moved from 28 to 31. 31 states already have ranked choice voting in some form. We thought it was just 2. No. The reason I'm standing here today and not just talking about Alaska, ranked choice voting has already spread to 31 states. 14 states are considering implementing it or expanding it, in large part because it worked so well in Alaska. And Congress has already considered twice mandating it in all 50 states for all U.S. House and Senate races. I believe they're going to take up the bill again this session. How big is our majority? 4 people to hold them, guys. That's a heck of a hockey team. 31, 14, and 50, which means, next slide, if we don't act now, the entire U.S. election system is about to change. The entire U.S. election system. It's not just us. It's everyone, everywhere, the entire country. They've been working on this since the 1990s. These special interest funded groups have been pushing this agenda on us since the 1990s. And one of their strongholds to say it works so great, their case study example is Alaska. So it is absolutely imperative that we counter that narrative, that we tell them our story, the voter suppression story, the real testimonials of real Alaskans saying, this didn't work and I was confused. I have PhD people in Anchorage who didn't vote for the first time because they didn't understand ranked choice voting, all the way out to friends in Kotzebue who did the same thing. We have to tell that story and then get that into the hands of all these legislators in 15 states now, into the hands of the people who are mobilizing to fight ranked choice voting, to get them the resources that they need. We produce it, we'll give it to them for free. You want the story of Alaska? Here it is. We've already been talking, our team's already talked with Speaker McCarthy. We're going to take this to Jim Jordan, running the Judiciary Committee. This is something Congress needs to know about before they consider this bill again. We've got to fight ranked choice voting, and it's not a partisan issue, it's an everyone issue. But who has the best story to tell? We do. Now, you might remember, I think I was here first week of the campaign, and I told you, I believe Alaska's on the front lines of leading the nation. And I know we've all suffered a really hard loss, and some of us have cried, some of us more than others, about things that have happened the last couple months. But my husband made a really good observation, and I'm really glad that he's here with me tonight. He said, you know what, Kelly, right now, we thought we wanted to be one of 535 votes in a gridlock Congress having to deal with Joe Biden. There's only so much you can get done. He said, or we have a very, very narrow window in time where we have the singular opportunity to be on the front lines to lead the nation to stop the spread of ranked choice voting. And when you see these numbers I just told you, and you know how close it is, and there's only one state that can tell this story, and there's only one group of super passionate people who really just aren't afraid of Lower 48. You know, not afraid of what they're going to write about us, are we? He said, are we willing, like, is this not the better option to just take a short detour for a couple years and make sure that we turn back the tide and we restore everybody to a traditional election system that's easy to understand and accessible to everyone, where voters aren't disenfranchised and vote suppression isn't existing like it does under ranked choice voting? Isn't that important? And aren't we uniquely positioned to do it? And so can't we just trust that there are higher plans than the ones that we've made? Yeah, we can. And so what's the solution? Here's where we need your help. Wait for it. We got to target our root causes. Number one, we've got to get rid of ranked choice voting. And number two, we've got to target getting out the vote. If you want to get on our email list, quick, fill out these envelopes. If you just add your email, I'll add you to the email list. We're going to send out another blast to Alaskans. I've already written the email. All you have to do is click to send and put your name at the bottom. We make letter writing easy here. But George needs as many of these emails as he can in order to show his other legislator friends we have widespread support across Alaska to get rid of ranked choice voting. And so you think, well, you know, like my vote doesn't matter, my letter doesn't matter. It does. Numbers matter on these things. But he's not the only one. We have legislators trying to repeal and block ranked choice voting, just like DeSantis did. They need support, and I'm connected with them. We also have all these legislatures in the U.S. who are looking to implement it. And, you know, these newspapers that are talking about how great it was in Alaska. If you want to help out, sign up and say, I want to volunteer, and I'd be happy to put you on the volunteer list and say, anybody who wants to write a letter, if you want to help, we need a lot of help in this way. I like writing, I don't like writing thousands of letters. So we need to do that. And then getting out the vote, increasing voter registration and getting out the vote. You'll see us active in that for the next couple years. I'm going to pause on the next slide, which is the website, and just say, what questions do you have? Yes.
I know there's another group that is willing to... Margaret, can you wait till you...
Margaret, can you wait till you get the thing? Thank you.
I know there's another group that's got petition books
Yes.
and all that. Are you working with them?
Yes.
Okay.
So several of the people who are leading that initiative are also helping us with our initiative. They're parallel tracks that complement each other. Or one of them said it's a synergistic effort. I said, I like that. It's a nice word. The idea being they're putting their resources and effort into getting the signatures on the petition. Every dollar they raise is going to have to go into getting signatures on the petition. In the meantime, as Senator Hughes told me recently, while they're doing that, we can't let the narrative get away from us so that, 9 months from now when we go, yay, we got the signatures, it's on the ballot, we've also been inundated with propaganda for 9 months about how great ranked choice voting is. and there's no counter message. We can't let that happen. And so we have to do both and that's how we're working together. Great question.
Kelly,
Yeah.
how can we assist you in taking on the outside entities and supporting what you just said? I'm an Alaskan. This is what happened to me as an Alaskan, and that will definitely suppress your voting, and you'll have the wrong individual. How can we do that? Is that something about the letter writing campaign?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things you can do if you take one of these envelopes and you say, I want to donate, for example, even if you just throw in $5, on our website it says, I'm donating because. And if you put in a testimony, we're collecting some of those exceptional testimonies and we're putting them out on our website, on social media, and in letters. And that's a really easy way for me to collect a lot of information quickly. But if you're like, I think I have a particular testimony that's needed, just email us. My email is on here, but it's kelly@preservedemocracy.com. Or if you want to use the general one, info@preservedemocracy.com. And we can collect and say, like I heard one today about what actually happened at a polling center. That's all really important information. That's how we get a lot of this information, right, that we put into these slides. And so getting important testimonial information and videos is what kind of builds that compelling narrative, and that's very helpful. At the back? Oh, you have it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I've got two questions, if you will humor me. You said that the state statute demands that the vote be auditable.
Yes.
And because it wasn't, does that actually meet legal standards for fraud? In which case, if fraud vitiates everything, would that be something that is that part of what's going to be brought up in court?
Yeah, really good question. I think that was brought up in a court case, and our court system said it doesn't matter because that statute technicality doesn't matter because the voters overrode that with a ballot measure. But I don't think just not being auditable means that it is a fraudulent system. We would have to prove that fraud occurred in the system that could not be audited to make a case.
Okay, so having to prove motive for fraud.
Or actual, that would be part of it, but actual, like something actually happened.
Actually, okay.
Yeah.
And then regarding getting the voting out, one of the things that I observed on the day I went and voted, right after I voted, I stopped to get gas and I went in and there were 3 people working there. And I said, did you get out and vote? And they said, well, we don't get off until 10 o'clock, so we can't leave. And I said, well, voting is a right in America. Your boss can't tell you you're not allowed to. And they said, yeah, well, my paycheck matters more right now than voting, so I can't leave. Is there any way that we can make it clear? I mean, is there a way to ensure that people can go without fear of reprisal from work and vote?
There are legislators who have taken up this kind of an idea. I think the way that our legislature dealt with that is by saying you can request absentee ballots basically without cause. You can just say, if you can't come that day, then you can get an absentee ballot. But that's a question that people are taking up across the country of how do we deal with the things that come up on election date because they tend to result in lower voter turnout. Yeah.
Hey, I had a question since you've got a lot of figures and the mail-in voting, what part did it play into it, and our bloated, corrupted voter rolls as well? Is there an equal push to get those cleaned up, stop mail-in voting, and just allow absentee voting, which should be allowed for people that need to have it, and then clean up the voter rolls? And were there any figures on how that affected ranked voting as well?
Yep, great question. So we expected certain percentages in early voting, which is the people who came to the polls, some of you may have done that, and absentee voting. We don't do mail ballots for state elections, and those were also low. So some of you may have been at our election victory party on election night, and we started up really high, and then as the hours went on, it started dropping, and a lot of that was because those early voting numbers we were at the end of them coming in. We had a significant advantage early, but then we expected larger drops to come in that night, and they weren't coming in. And that was my first indication, something's wrong. And it was simply a numbers game. Rural didn't come in, so they tend to vote through absentee. They didn't come in. Their voting day numbers were low too. And it just was consistent that way throughout the entire election. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan of War Room
Yes.
and One American News, so Real America's Voice. I absolutely love Steve Bannon. But I couldn't help, and I just wanted to make you aware of it, that not long after your results came in, that news station, Real America's Voice, and One American News, they ran that ad about how supposedly difficult this election was due to ranked choice, with the kindergartners sitting around and them asking about animals. I don't know if you're aware of it. My point is, how do we go up against these big conservative, right people, if you will, correct people, not even conservative necessarily, but how do we go up against or bring to the attention of these big media outlets such as Real America's Voice, One America's News, and say, what are you doing?
Right.
I don't know if you were aware of that.
No.
They were all over it within
Yeah.
24 hours of your results coming out, and I was like, oh no.
So what you're identifying, I really appreciate you saying that. Remember when I said the people who have the most money? Okay. This is exactly what we're talking about. The networks actually, under FCC rules, they don't get to say what they will and won't air if someone comes in, and otherwise, if it's not illegal, regardless of the political leaning. And in fact, because of the political leaning, they have to have balanced politics, which is also interesting. You put down your money, they have to run the ad. And so I would often get on the air on favorable stations right after a slam, one of those slam news article or slam radio ads that you guys heard. And then the host would be like, I'm sorry, we have to. And I'm like, I know, those are the rules. And these would be the more conservative shows, but they're required to. So to your point, isn't it interesting that right after our election results were announced, the pro-ranked choice voting team was running very high quality ads on very expensive stations? Why? Why do they need to persuade us in late November 2022 that ranked choice voting is so good? Why? I love playing with why questions like a cat with a ball of yarn. Why? Why? I mean, if I were going to run for election again, which a lot of people have been asking me, would I run an ad in late November 2022, a really expensive ad, and then continue to run it through January? Why would I do that? Wouldn't that be like wasted money? Because people aren't going to remember when they need to make the decision 2 years from now, right? Why? And this is what occurred to me. I don't know if this is true. It could just be we're playing the long propaganda game. But remember in the beginning, I told you we have the ballot initiative, the legislature, and what's over here? There's a court case pending. I haven't seen a lot of articles about that court case, have you? No. But it's pending. And it's in the federal courts, not the Alaska courts that all throughout all of our ranked choice challenges. It's in the federal courts. And I might have a law degree, and I think it's legit. Not the law degree, the case. The law degree is legit. That one hurt. The merits of the case look really legit. So if it gets thrown out, it would get thrown out when? Soonish? Yeah. And then what will happen? True, but post-Trump, Trump put a lot of people on the bench that have balanced it out, and then where would it go? So if it doesn't go in our favor, where would it go? The U.S. Supreme Court. Again, if this case goes our way, and we find out soonish, and it's an if, but I might not be the only person who's thinking this, which might be why we have really expensive ads playing. It might not be that we're going to see a ballot initiative against ranked choice. It might be that they're gearing up for a ballot initiative for ranked choice. Speaking of, this past week, there was a very expensive push poll where they're polling you, but they're telling you what you need to think as they're polling you for ranked choice. I'm telling you very clearly why I'm going to do a poll, a not as expensive poll, but a poll that's really important against ranked choice. Why are they doing a poll for ranked choice? We already have a ballot initiative going to take it off. Why are they polling for ranked choice, guys?
Persuade and convince.
Right, but why? Unless it's pending. So if they started right after the election results, they must think they have a real fight on their hands and that it's imminent. And I think that's really good, don't you? Which is why we need everybody in this room. I keep getting told, don't give up the fight. Okay, but I don't like to fight alone. They have a real fight on their hands. And we need to join in together and say, okay, if they're taking it seriously, so are we. Hi.
Hello. Would you just tell everyone in the room about how much it costs to implement ranked choice voting in Alaska?
So fascinating. I'm so glad you asked. A long time ago, in a commissioner's office far, far away, I was in charge of putting together with a team fiscal notes for the legislature to tell them how much it was going to cost for us to upgrade and overhaul our entire election system. None of you were paying attention to elections then. This was before an election audit was written. This was before anyone knew about Dominion machines. I think the only person paying attention to anything elections was Joe, okay? So we had to put together these fiscal notes and we put it to the legislature and they approved it, thank you legislators, and we upgraded and overhauled the entire election system for the entire state. All the machines had been really old, they needed new ones. The whole system got upgraded. It was about a little over $4 million to do that, okay? All right, fast forward, 2020 happens, the election audit happens, ranked choice voting happens, and now we're way over here. I'm now working on this task force to fight ranked choice voting across the nation. I get an inquiry from another state saying, they're telling us it's going to be cheaper to do ranked choice voting. That's what I said. I'm thinking, that doesn't feel right. I saw all those ads just like you did. And how many times did you go to training on ranked choice voting and somebody from the state was there, right? So I did some poking around. I got some really great numbers. How much did it cost for us to implement, do system changes, and educate on ranked choice voting? Any guesses? That's what it felt like. I agree with you, Sharon. It was about $4 million.
No cheaper.
I think it's going to be 7 to 10 next election because we're not done educating. Look at the numbers. It cost us about $4 million to overhaul and upgrade the entire election system. And it cost us about $4 million to implement and educate on ranked choice voting. You can get an entire new election system for the cost of implementing ranked choice voting. That's another part of the narrative of ranked choice voting. Oh, ranked choice voting saves you money. How does it save you money? I'd like to see that calculation because your calculator is just different from mine. It makes a really good talking point on a flyer that comes to your house, but it's just not true. And I just think truth still matters. And I think, to your point, Sharon, this next election cycle, 2024, we're going to have to see the Division of Elections still do a heck of a lot of training because a lot of people I know are still really confused. How do I not get my ballot discharged? If we're seeing 27% getting thrown out in this study, you know, I was upset. I hear stories about people crying at the polls. Okay, so they're going to have to do it again, and so now it's more expensive to do ranked choice voting, and it's an ongoing expense. Rather than just having a simple election system, easy to understand, accessible to everyone. Thank you for the question, Michelle.
I've got a question back here.
Hi, Pastor.
A friend of mine in Hawaii turned a district around that was a very liberal district by ballot harvesting. And so I'm not a fan of it, but it's a part of what we can use in the arsenal of getting the vote out. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to define what ballot harvesting is. So anybody who has seen some documentaries, we probably don't like some of the behavior we saw in documentaries, which is different than the actual literal definition, which simply is chasing absentee ballots. Okay? Let's say all of you in the room get an absentee ballot. It would be irresponsible for me as a candidate not to go and try and get you to turn in your absentee ballot, correct? And if I happen to be having lunch with Edna and I say, hey, you want to fill out your ballot right now and I can turn it in for you, that would be a productive use of our time, right? I just ballot harvested. Did that feel dirty though? No, that's a little bit normal. I'm in the middle of election season. She's a friend. So that's the typical idea of just getting these absentee ballots turned in. So there's ways you can do this. One is, let's say the whole room gets absentee ballots, and then say all the candidates have the phone numbers, the emails, and the addresses of everybody in the room. And instead of them coming to you personally, they just make very diligent phone calls and emails and say, hey, get your ballots in, get your ballots in. Remember, here's your slate of candidates. Remember, 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 remember. And then everybody remembers, because don't you have that stack of mail on your table like I do? And you're not sure if it's a ballot or a credit card application, and you're just going to throw the whole thing away because you got other things to do today. That's part of what they would consider ballot harvesting, just simply that. Or if we're going to go door knocking and we happen to be out in the valley and we knock all your doors and we say, hey, do you have your ballot? All right, remember to get it in. Also ballot harvesting. Or hey, you have your ballot? Can I run it out to your mailbox for you? Ballot harvesting. But those things don't feel as shady as some of the things we've seen in movies, where you wonder, did the voters even fill out their ballots? Or what's actually happening here? And so I think sometimes it's really important to actually define what's happening. So I prefer using the word ballot chasing when we're talking about these actions that I'm telling you. I think we need to get a lot more disciplined about ballot chasing. When we were doing our campaign, we were doing our process and procedures, but I was watching all the mail coming in. Some of our other people on the final, Republicans on the final general ticket did not send any ballot chasers. So you got no follow-up reminder saying, hey, remember to vote for me, you're a Republican candidate in the general election, get in your absentee ballots, they're due by this date. Okay, we know statistically you're gonna have a massive significant percentage of drop-off. So if I was the only one, hypothetically, sending them out, and we had 4 or 5 candidates on statewide ballots, then we had 20% turnout for absentee ballot chasers when you could have just been consistently bombarded. Do you see what I mean? Because in that time of year, when, every sign, every corner, every ad, we were a little bit overwhelmed with election stuff, you needed to be absolutely bombarded to remember to get things in. And that could be why we had lower turnout. So this is something we could use help with.
We recently just got to watch in Juneau the folks that brought us ranked choice voting to Alaska be the main ones testifying in front of the committees about ranked choice voting, including the attorneys that made the ballot measure the multiple items passable through our court system. When are you guys going to be able to present your side in front of our legislative body so that they're not just hearing the people that sold us this false bill of sale point of view, but actually hear the other side of the narrative that's not being spoken?
I can't answer for what the legislature will do, but I do think we would have potentially some opportunity with what George Rauscher is doing, because he's in part of the majority in the House. I think the people who are leading the majority in the Senate are probably more inclined towards ranked choice voting at this point. That said, remember, we've only started this effort and movement, both the petition and this, just in the last couple months. Whereas the other group has been around for a couple years. And I think people are a lot more familiar with them. They've worked with them. One of our senators is actually part of the founders of the other group. That's a little bit of background information there. And so I think it'll take a while before people know, hey, this is up and running and there is a counterpoint and it's actually well documented and we need to actually pay attention to what's happening here. Fortunately, I'm getting a lot more invitations to come and speak, and I think that the news is going to travel fast, but this is something you can help with. We have a lot of content that we're posting on social media and that we're posting on the website, and any of that you can continue, go into your groups on social media, onto your pages and repost. I'm not super good at reposting things into other people's pages and groups and it doesn't look right, okay? But if you can be that ambassador for me, the message will spread a lot faster. Like for example, the last version of this slideshow, I'll update this new one, is on our website. And so you can take this and pass it around, or any of the blurbs that we'll put out on social media, which are tiny like this, you can pass and put into little groups, because people just don't know. They think, you know, well, it was good, it was easy to understand, we got different outcomes, that was nice, rah, rah, rah. And they don't actually know the dark underside of it, which is some of the stuff I showed you today.
Kelly? So I know a lot of 40-somethings who have decided that voting doesn't matter anymore. How do we convince them to get back in the game and that it does matter and it's critical? Because they're not, and they're strong conservatives.
There's a little bit of a drop-off that's happened since 2020. I think there's a lot of voter fatigue. I hear a lot of, I think the poll will really help us with this. I want to actually gauge and assess what's the root cause, because if you go out and you target a different cause than what's actually going on, then we'll miss diagnosing the problem. And then I think it's a lot of messaging. It's a lot of getting to some of our major radio hosts. I've got great relationships with a lot of these people that they can kind of keep hammering on the root cause issues. I think it's coming up with really important metaphors and images that people could go, oh yeah, I understand that. Like this one I think is important. I shared this with someone, they're like, that makes a lot of sense. I live in a neighborhood where all the driveways look the same, but some driveways are cheaters. You know what I mean? They've got that switch where their driveway has heat in it. Cheaters, right? Not my driveway. I've got a snowplow. It's called 4 Kids. Get out there, go plow. It's totally different. So when there's a little snow or maybe like a low average snow, the rest of us are out there shoveling the driveway, and the cheaters go to the garage and flip a switch. And you can tell who they are because they have no ice and no snow on their driveway, and you're like, I hear from a lot of people, my vote doesn't matter because the system's rigged, or I don't trust the elections, or I don't trust the machines or whatever. Okay, you don't want to vote because you think that there's a switch. I understand. But you know what happens in a blizzard? Doesn't matter that they have a switch. Doesn't matter. Their driveway looks like everybody else's driveway. In fact, they might have a disadvantage because you turn on that switch and then you get a lot of ice. Haha. And that is the exact solution of voter turnout. That's why you see me saying, and voter turnout, and voter turnout. It is so critical that even if we're stuck with a system people don't like and they don't trust and they think that we have to get to this root cause and just blizzard them with votes. Because in the end, it all washes out because of voter turnout. And this is true across systems. When I did the audit of the Division of Elections, we were looking at vulnerabilities in election systems. We were looking at what all the voting centers say about what to look for fraud and this and that and this. And it does not matter, no matter what you look at or what you see, or the Arizona audit, I read that backwards and forwards. It doesn't matter, these vulnerabilities get washed away with voter turnout. So there could be an error here or an error there. And if the voter turnout is so big, it just washes over the vulnerabilities in an election system. Voter turnout is really the key. So get out the vote efforts are really essential. This is an area where, again, when it comes election time, because we're coming around the mountain again, guys, really encouraging friends, kind of bundling activity, going door knocking, getting people to come to vote. Holding vote parties. So we're all going to go vote, and then we're all going to go to the whatever bar and drink. Okay, that works. Finding ways to make it fun, I think, is another way to solve it. We've got to identify the root cause and solve it, and then we've got to get the voter turnout back up.
One thing I'm not sure everybody's aware of, the ballot measure that brought ranked choice voting to us was an illegal ballot measure. There were 3 items on that ballot measure. A ballot measure is supposed to have 1 item on it. And our rogue Supreme Court did not uphold that.
That's correct. That might work to our advantage now. They said to summarize that Supreme Court case, they said they rise together, they fall together, because the voters voted it in. So if the federal court throws out this one of the provisions, they rise together, they fall together. Because the provision being challenged is not actually the ranked choice system, it's the dark money system. They rise together, they fall together. So isn't it interesting how how bad news can circle right back around and become good news. Let's hope that that's how that case turns out. Is there a last question?
One more, if I might. Ranked choice voting was complex into the machines, and we had errors before, and we saw the pictures of the pile of rejected votes out behind in Anchorage. Did ranked choice voting exacerbate machine errors? Was that a problem? And have you reviewed the 35 pages in HB1 that Rouse George just sent it to everybody? And I was wondering, why is it so expansive in its size rather than just say reject ranked choice voting?
I haven't had that conversation with Representative Rauscher. It's interesting. We can talk about that. I am confident that ranked choice voting exacerbated ballot rejection simply because I think that that's part of the lower voter turnout. I don't know that we actually had that few of people show up to polling stations, but actual votes registered. I think a lot of our voters their ballots just got absolutely discharged. But we also have those studies that show ranked choice voting results in discharged ballots and these ballots being thrown out just from the very beginning, not exhausted after round one, exhausted before it even begins. So I'm not sure that they actually did numbers on it. It'd be interesting to see if the division calculated that. But if it was true everywhere else, it was true here. Yeah.
I'm trying to be nonpartisan.
Yeah.
But are any of the major mic I'm trying to be nonpartisan, but are any of the parties, like I assume many folks here are probably conservative, but is the Republican National Committee, are they kind of helping in this manner financially or otherwise to kind of get this pushed through?
Yeah, great question. No and no at this point. So our Alaska Republican Party is taking a knee. They don't want to help out with the organization or what we're doing. I do think we're going to get traction and support at the national level from one or more of those national leaders. That's why we've been in talks with McCarthy's office. I think they understand our Alaska Senate. But when you start to understand, actually that's not what happened here. And 53% want to overturn, and when we finish our poll, which your donations will help support, and this is what our people are saying, this is what our disaffected groups are saying, then those numbers are really hard to combat. And when you see quotes like this, like Gavin Newsom is opposed to it and the NAACP is opposed to it, then we start to get more people on board who would be like, oh, this actually isn't a party thing. This is actually a people thing. And the people are invested in making sure that their election system has integrity and reflects the votes of the people, even if the outcome was exactly the same.
Who's funding the opposition to keep stopping us from removing it?
So interestingly, they're pretty clear about it at the bottom of Alaskans for Better Elections. There's these 3 or 4 outside groups, and when you start digging in, you can go to Influence Watch or OpenSecrets.com, and you can pull open, just like I did, the names of these groups and who actually funds them. I thought it was also interesting in that article where I quoted Parnell and Begich, they commented that the one largest donor group is a Colorado-based group. And the primary organization that's been pushing ranked choice for all this time is located in that region as well. Mm-hmm. Always follow the money trail.
Yeah, Kelly.
Hey, John.
People in the valley just flat out don't trust the voting machines, period. Yeah. And thanks to a lot of people that were very concerned, we got rid of them out here in the valley. How does that play into this whole situation, those voting machines that I think Arizona is voting to get rid of their Dominion machines, and a lot of other places are too at the same time. To me, that's kind of like the bottom line right there. If they can manipulate the machine, voter turnout and stuff like that is, I mean, you have to have a huge effort to overcome the manipulation of the machines.
So in a statewide race, I think you'd have to have that passed by the legislature, and your sense, your intuition is right, that ranked choice voting can only happen by an algorithm that they say is only calculated by a machine. The reason it cannot be audited is it cannot be replicated by a human. And so therefore, it's a machine-driven process. But if we're going to say statewide, we're going to do our elections differently. We're going to go back to say paper ballots, which is something that our current lieutenant governor campaigned on, then that also would mean that we have to move away from the ranked choice voting tabulation at the end. Okay. One final question?
Yeah, a couple minutes earlier, a gal brought up the 40-somethings and being disenfranchised. I can tell you, when I opened up my example ballot, the way it was folded, Santa Claus came up first. And I read that, and it kind of ticked me off, because what happens is people think it's a joke to vote. And I don't know about you folks, but that's a disgrace. So it's even the way they're folding the ballots, because what do we have, 50 candidates for House initially?
Right.
So they sent out that example ballot, and like, what was it, Cinderella? Because it started at C and went to Z and then went back to A, B. It was bizarre how they laid it out. And I don't know if that's Juno or who's sending out the example ballots, but I definitely noticed it because I thought to myself, this is a disgrace. They're making a joke out of it. I don't know if you folks noticed it or not.
Lloyd?
I'm Santa Claus of the South. That one of the North, he is a socialist communist. So don't get your Santa Clauses confused here. The question that I had, which is a kind of a different question, it's concerning the algorithms. I hear constantly, though, that because it's Dominion, because it's in the machines, the algorithms, you can't be able to find that. I question that very seriously. I mean, it's a human brain that comes up with the stuff to begin with. I understand the volumes of it, but we don't have hardly anybody here in the whole state to begin with. So to say that we can't be able to hand count or whatever this thing, I question that severely to be able to come up with that. Even if you're going to deal with the ranked choice vote, which I went to Juneau, and I can guarantee you it was cheated in that election to be able to pass it in the first place. Many times it had to be bumped for them to be able to get that thing passed, because we voted it down to begin with. But the question is that portion concerning the algorithm and people being able to count it.
Oh, I understand your question. That's not my statement. That's Gail Fanumi's statement. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I also am not sitting up here saying that I can do mental algorithms in my head. So, or do a recount on our election because of the ranked choice algorithm. That means we won't get an audit or a recount, regardless of whether really great brains that can do algorithms and hand counts can do it themselves. I don't know that it matters. Those people aren't at the Division of Elections. So.
And if you know where Fanumia comes from, too.
And so with that, I left some baskets around the audience so that it makes it easy to pass the basket. I've done this before here, and I don't want to create a bottleneck at the table. And so if you want to pass the basket while we're wrapping up, for anyone who has envelopes for donations, I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it as a team. And contact information, that would be fantastic. And if you're like, oh my gosh, it's already basket time, that's okay. You can drop it in at the basket at the table at the back.
Yeah, and Eric and maybe Josh, if you grab some pencils and give it to, make it available to people, so as the basket goes around, if they want to fill out the card and the envelope and stuff. So if you need a pen, just raise your hand and they'll get you a pen, or an envelope if you don't have one. So.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Yes, thanks, Kelly, for coming and also it's good to see your hubby here too. For those of you that have been with us since almost the very beginning, you know that one of the very first classes we had was 2 classes on the U.S. Constitution, and her husband came and talked to us about that, which was very enjoyable. And so I don't know if you're going to have him travel all over the United States with you or what, but maybe we'll make a claim on him to get him to come back to help us with some of those kind of things, so. So has everybody had a chance, if you need a pen to fill out a card, or has everybody had a chance to sign up for the midwifery legislation and things like that? It's interesting to me, as I think most of you know, I did serve in the legislature a long, long time ago, and that was, I think, in the mid-'80s, and that's when you first started with trying to be recognized, as well as to come up with the rules and regulations, and so that was plowing some pretty hard dirt back in then, and so glad to see that you're still there and pushing for that. So let's see, Candy, did you have an announcement that you wanted to make?
Yes, March 25th is going to be the Governor's Prayer Breakfast in Anchorage at the Denina Center. So it's just about a month away. You can also, there's a very important event. It's live, it's free, and Kirk Cameron and another gentleman, I don't remember his name, that's this Saturday on the 18th. And you can go to engage23.com. It's free, and it's for parents who have teenagers. That is a serious information on people that have teenagers and how to train them, teach them to stay out of what's going on in the world. Engage23.com. I think that is it.
John, Eric, would you take and give that to your wife, and if CJ will talk about the QR code and what you're doing there that's on the table?
Sure.
Yeah.
If you are in one of the Mat-Su Republican districts or House districts, we are doing Region 2, which consists of the 6 House districts and the 3 Senate districts. We're doing a newsletter. We're trying to get communication out there. And if you're interested in being a part of that newsletter, there's a QR code that you can sign up for the newsletter. If you don't know how to do it, we can help you. It's pretty easy. All you have to have is a smartphone. If you don't have it, I'll take your name somewhere else and we'll get you on the list. But I am asking, we're trying to keep it to a Republican base, but we're happy to sign you up as a Republican too. So if you're not one already. But communication is key, and trying to get the information out is what we're working on. And there will be hopefully monthly newsletters with information, and then any type of an action alert, like with Representative Rauscher, those kind of emails will come out. And we're just trying to get the communication out.
Yeah, Eric, in fact, what maybe you could do is take one of our our blank sign-up sheets and put across the top for the region newsletter, and that could be available there on the table too, for those that don't want to do the QR code or something. Thanks, Eric.
Mm-hmm. And then on Saturday, in Tshibaka at the Senior Center is the Concerned Conservatives of Alaska meeting at 11 o'clock, and we have someone coming to talk to us about the grand juries and our rogue Supreme Court, and letting you guys know how much trouble we're in. So everybody should attend. I think it's really scary. Thank you.
And if some of you didn't get a chance to sign when David Haig was here, there is some forms back on the table, so you can sign up for his newsletter and be kept abreast of what's going on down in the Kenai area. Okay, you got one? Okay, good.
My name is Robert. There is a petition that has some teeth in it that was referenced, and that petition needs 27,000 signatures by a certain date, and I'm going to have one of those booklets for petitions to have signed. And with your permission, I would bring it to the school government meeting.
Bill's
And-
supposed to be here 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay, well.
Yeah, he wasn't sure he would have the booklets, but I guess they did come in, and
I've
then
seen
he
them.
had already,
Okay.
yeah, obligated himself for tonight. But yes, you're welcome to bring one, and as far as I know, he's supposed to be here in 2 weeks.
So
But
be
go ahead
one of
and
the
finish.
27,000, okay, and bring your friends. Or at some point, well, I'll get a petition book to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
you're
so
welcome.
that's coming up at one of the School of Government meetings down the road.
Sure, yeah, we'll, anytime anybody that has signed up to be a sponsor can bring the booklet, no problem. You don't happen to have it in
Each
your-
booklet has 156 signature spaces in it.
Okay,
So the booklet sizes are like that.
okay.
So
You don't have yours in the car or anything, do you?
I do not have mine in the car. I'll be getting mine Thursday night.
Oh, okay, so you don't have it yet. Okay, so we'll forgive you for not bringing it in.
Silly me. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Do you have some meetings going on in Anchorage that are you still involved in that? Do you want to announce
Yeah,
any
there's
of
a
that?
group there called AMAC, the Mature American Citizens, the Greater Anchorage Group, and they actually meet once a month, the third Thursday every month, and the attendance is pretty good, and the meeting topics are current. So that goes on, and this Thursday, the 16th, is one of those gatherings at the, I think it's called the Wellspring Campus in Anchorage. And I invite any of you who don't want to drive to Anchorage and check that meeting out. It's there. You can have access to an email invite if you'll see me at some point and tell me your email address, then I'll get you on the mailing list for it.
Do you have a speaker you want to announce, or?
The speaker is, Bob Bird is on there, Craig Campbell,
Okay.
Lauren Lehman,
What are they going to be?
Sarah Palin.
What are they going to be talking about?
The rollout of the sign-up books.
Oh, okay.
So it's the one that's parallel to and complementary to this program.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I don't think I have any more questions of you. You anything else you want to say?
I don't. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any comments? Do you have any news from Juneau that we want to share? No? Anything else? Okay, well, you all want to stand, and I'll dismiss us in prayer. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be back here, and Carol Carmen, who is one of our district Republican leaders and is very knowledgeable regarding the legislature's website and how to access bills and follow bills and how to get your word out, how to testify, et cetera, et cetera. She and CJ are working on a presentation. And then possibly a month from tonight, we will have both the pro and the con on the carbon tax. I don't know, some of you probably have been researching that and reading about it, and so we're working. We have one side that has said yes, they will be here in a month, and we'll be working on the other side. So we'll be able to have a debate on whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. So that's what the patrol is planned. Okay, so I'll close. Lord, I just thank you for the people, Lord, that you have gathered here tonight. Lord, I ask you for a special blessing upon them and their family, Lord. And Lord, I ask again, as I do always, that they will do your plan and your purpose in their life, Lord. And together, then, we will be able to bring righteous government to this state and to the nation, Lord. But each one of us have to do a part. They cannot do my part, and I cannot do theirs. We can educate them, we can inform them, we can embarrass them, and we can help to motivate them, Lord, but it's between you and them, Lord, and for them to pray and obey for what God wants them to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Bear with me just 1 second here, folks. I'll do a quick wrap up and let you guys all go. All right, thank you guys all for being here again tonight. You know how the story goes. You can find this live on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, at Politadick and Politadick Unfiltered. You can also find this on Rumble within the next few hours. Help us live stream directly to them instead of having to wait for it to propagate. Go to rumble.com. Type in Politadick and become a subscriber to us. The sooner we reach 100 subscribers, the quicker we can start to stream live directly to them instead of having to wait. As always, you can go to our website, Politadick.com, anytime we're live and watch it there also. And while you're there, click on that support button. All proceeds go right back in to keep expanding what we're doing here. I just discovered my battery backup somehow exploded as I was trying to connect it into the stream here today to keep my phone up and running. Good thing it ended. And I'm also in need of an upgrade boom microphone, and your support can make that happen. The next microphone that I'm looking to go out and get is going to be about $450, and I really do need your support to be able to get it. It would be nice to be able to have that set up so that I can capture people from across the room without having to worry about them being mic'd up to be able to be heard. Or, in today's circumstances, I actually had to connect the microphone up over at the speaker because the boom mic would not connect in without static. So help us out. Go to our website, Politadick.com, hit that support button, and all proceeds go right back into doing what we're doing here. Not a penny goes into my own pocket unless you consider gas money to be able to get me there sometimes as a part of the way we go. Thank you again once you all for all being here tonight, and like and share. This was Kelly Tshibaka, brought to you, presented by the School of Government and Preserving Our Democracy, repealing ranked choice voting, educating all Alaskans, and hopefully those around the United States, telling them to wake up, don't fall for the trap. Thanks again. Have a great night.